Welcome to my studio. I'm Heather Hawley, and today we're going to be working on a very exciting project. So many of my students have asked me, how do I paint looser? How do I bring highlights into my painting as well as depth and interest? So this project, the Black Eyed Susan project, is definitely going to bring you into that next level where you can learn how to paint so much looser and learn that it's not about having a pretty picture in the beginning of your painting. Your painting is a process and you have to build up interest, and at the end you add the highlights. A lot of students want to create the finished piece in the first couple of hours, and yes, there are some paintings you can do that, but most paintings do require a little bit of foundation work, and that's what we're going to start with today. So I hope you enjoy this project, and yeah, I'm going to show you a picture of it right now, and we can get started, get all our supplies together. I will see you soon at my easel. We're first going to ground our canvas using yellow and red and some white. Grounding your canvas provides not only a base for your painting, but also warmth underneath the finished layers. So it's really a great way to bring that in. So we're only going to put a small amount using a triangular shape or a diamond shaped palette knife. Take some yellow, your primary yellow, and some red and a little bit of white. You don't want too much white because you don't want it to be too pale. White will make it really pastel. So mix it all completely. And then taking a flat brush or a filbert brush, pick up the paint on both sides of your brush. Okay, so you'll have sort of an orange color there, or peachy orange. And pick up it on one side and then the other. Okay, and then start putting it on in a very loose way. So it should look like a light pumpkin color. Make sure to get the edges as well to finish it all off. And if you find that it's not covering completely, if you made it really thin, just do one more coat. And completely do the edges as well. There. Now that that's done, you want it to dry completely before you start drawing on your flowers. So using a piece of chalk, do your largest circle first up in the left hand corner, and then an oval or a sort of half circle down at the closer to the bottom part. And then you can do very loose petals using the chalk. Remember, chalk is a great thing to use because you can change anything as you need to with a little bit of water and paper towel or a Q-tip and water, so you can remove. Notice how I did some curved petals? That'll just give interest to your painting. Now on the smaller flower that you're doing on the lower part of your painting, when you put the half circle in or the oval in, what you're trying to imply is that this flower is on the side. So when you do the petals, you're going to do them in that curved way, like it's a petal or a flower viewed from the side. Yeah, and so it's going to look really great and very interesting. And that's what your beginning is going to look like. And you can erase anything at this point if you need to, or add a few more lines. Okay, so next we're going to mix up the darkest part of the centers. Now, going from dark to light, or dark to medium to light, is a really great technique. So we're going to use blue as your base color. And then a little bit of black as well to really deepen it. So you take aside some of your blue. See how it's a smaller amount than the orange, because the orange was for the whole background. And we're going to take some red, because red will warm up your blue and make it more towards sort of like a purpley color. And tiniest amount of black just to really deepen that color so it's the darkest possible blue that you can make. As long as you don't put too much black in it, you'll still be able to see that purple color. Right, so now you're going to fill those whole circles together completely. Don't leave any areas. Cover them completely. And you can use that same flat brush if you choose. The bigger the brush, the better if you're trying to paint loose. And that's a really great way to actually keep your paintings loose. So the largest size brush you can use will help you stay loose and stay away from all that detail. Another really great way to learn how to paint loose is to hold the very end of your brush handle sort of at the very tip of it. Not close to where the bristles are, but at the far end. And that'll help, and step back from your painting as well. The further you are from your painting, it'll also prevent you from getting too detailed and sort of getting tight with your paintings. So if you want, standing up, standing slightly back from it, and using the very longest brush you can use will work. I'm also going to use that same color in the background. For unity in your paintings, putting the dark color or any other colors that you use in your painting sort of somewhere else in the painting helps unify that whole painting together, and it ties it together so it doesn't look like one end of it is different than the other. So I put that darkest value in around the background just to give interest and feel like some of the leaves are actually sort of farther away. You might have to do 2 coats on that dark blue to cover over the orange. Remember, use a blow dryer. It'll speed up your painting time. Yeah, so I'm on to my second coat of the darkest blue. I know to you it appears black, but it actually has a blue tinge to it. Next, I'm going to do a sort of a rusty brown on the petals. And I'm going, remember, dark to mid-tone to light. So I'm going to use red and yellow and a little bit of black. That will create a nice brown color. So let's mix that up. So I'm mixing the red and yellow together first and then adding some black. Now, if you add too much black at one time or it looks too much like a mauve or purple, you can add a little bit more red and more yellow, and that'll bring it right back. So I found that that color brown was a little too dark, so I want to bring it more towards a reddish brown. Also, the orange underneath will help make it look a little bit more sort of rusty color when you put it on. Remember, anything underneath your painting will show through the other layers of paint. All right, so I'm using a rounded tipped filbert, and it's a medium size. The bigger brush, like I said, the better. So I'm going to put that on, okay, on both sides of my brush, and then I'm going to apply it to the petals. Now, when we're doing this painting, I've done this with many other students, and they were like, oh, it doesn't look nice at all. It looks so dark and dingy. But remember that painting is a process, and you need to build up layers and depth in order to make your painting look really interesting. If I just put the yellow on top, it wouldn't have that depth that you need in this painting. So just trust that the process will get you there, and we will bring the lighter colors in later. Actually, by the end of this video, you'll have at least the first coat of the lighter color in, and you'll start to see the painting come about. All right, so I'm just putting them in quite loosely. I'm not taking too much care in putting them in because I know I can reshape them if I need to with a background color. So I'm just sort of loosely putting it in really quickly. I hope you noticed that I did flip my painting around for you, just so you could see me do that curved one a little bit better. You may have noticed that. And that's why the smaller one seems to be at the top now. And remember, you can do that with your canvas at any time. If you feel that working with it a little bit like, upside down or switching it around so it makes it easier, there's nothing wrong with moving your canvas. The most important thing is to be comfortable when you paint and feeling really happy and relaxed. I always paint with music on. I find that it's relaxing, and I don't know how many other artists do that, but I find it's almost as important as paintbrushes and canvas. It's just listening to a good radio station and being relaxed when I paint. It's very important. Right, so now I'm doing that smaller flower, and I'm making sure that I keep that same shape of the curves of the petals. Very important to give that impression that is on the side, as opposed to being straight on like the larger flower. So that's what it looks like at this point. As you can see, it's like a rusty brown color. All right, so we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to start mixing. Oh, and before we do that, we have to remember to constantly spritz our palette, because that keeps all your paint nice and loose and workable. And make sure you blow dry between coats. Very helpful. All right, so now what we're going to be working on is some of the green, the darkest green in the background. So let's mix that green. So in order to do that, we're going to need some yellow and some blue. So let's start with the yellow and some blue. And see how quickly it turns green? Now the green that we're trying to make is the deepest green possible. And in order to get a really dark green, And I'm going to divide it because I don't want to just make one color green. I'm going to make two. So I'm adding a little bit more blue into one half of it because that'll make a darker green. So blue makes it darker, the yellow makes it lighter, and then we're going to add the complementary of green, which is red. And you don't need a lot of it, but when you add it to the green, it makes it more natural looking. It's not so vibrant, so it dulls it down a little bit and deepens it at the same time. But it looks more natural, and you don't have such a sort of shocking green color. So I'm going to start with this darkest one. I did find, yeah, it looks pretty good on the palette knife, but once I put it on my canvas, I realized instantly that it's much lighter because of the orange underneath. So I'm going to just a little bit down there and make a little darker color. You can start making a much darker color if you choose, but notice how I kind of overlap some of the dark blue and apply it. But see how green, really vibrant green it is? I really wanted that to be much darker, so I am going to make it a little bit darker later on in this video, but I did want you just to see how I applied the brush strokes. Very loose, and I overlap over the blue, and I kind of sort of go in around the petals so I can, you know, actually define those petals, because contrast is important. When we start bringing in the yellows in those Black-Eyed Susans, you're going to start to see how that contrast of the darker green against the yellow really defines the petals. Yeah, so you're going to put it all in around those areas that are not covered right now. And don't forget to overlap over some of the dark colors, the dark blues, and in around the petals. I just wanted to show you close up how bright that green is. So that's why it's much brighter than I wanted it to be. Okay, but you can change that quickly, and that's the beauty of acrylic painting. All you need to do is dry that layer, let it dry on its own or blow dry it, and instantly you'll be able to paint over it. Okay, so just showing you without any light reflecting on it how it looks. Okay, I'm putting more blue in that green color because notice how bright I had said that it was, and I'm adding a tiny bit of, well, it seemed to be a lot of black, and a little bit more red to make it more neutral. Okay, and it had enough green in it that it'll appear green when I put it on. So I'm just making a much darker green. It's almost like a deep forest green. And I'm just going to put that on the background to sort of get more contrast in there. Like I mentioned, I'm working in this project definitely. See how it's like a forest green? I'm definitely making it, I'm just adding like all the colors, black and blue and red and some yellow. And yeah, and making sure that what layer of paint was already on there, and the green was dry completely. Because if you don't, you'll just lift up the paint that's underneath. So make sure before the next layer goes on, it's definitely dry. All right, so I'm going to put in that really dark forest green to give depth to your painting, and it's an important step. We're working dark to mid-tone to light in this painting. It's definitely a great way to approach any painting. It's not the only way, but it is a good way. All right. So I'm on to the next step. So I'm going to be mixing up the yellow for the flowers, and I put some red into that. So I'm sort of making a golden yellow. And I'm going to add a little white into that as well. Because white, you don't want too much white. Because if you put too much white, you need to keep it a small amount. It'll just make it too pastel and too bright. And remember, we're working dark to mid-tone to light. And we're at the mid-tone stage right now. When I put this on, you're probably going to see that it looks a lot lighter. So down, as I'm painting, I'm adding more yellow or red into that to make it more towards an orange. See how bright and yellow, greenish yellow that is? I want it to be more of a golden yellow. So these first ones I put on are more yellow. But really, try to make it like a golden like yellow, like so a little bit more red into it. So it's not quite orange, but it's kind of like tangerine maybe. That might be the color name. So, and that's what I'm doing. See how I'm adding a little bit more golden? Because this is the mid-tone color. It's not supposed to be. It's kind of almost like a yellow ochre with a little bit more yellow in it. Yeah, so see how it's nice and warm? You don't want it too bright yellow at this point because you're going to put that on top as the lighter area or the lighter layer, and that's just going to bring the brightness in. So right now we're sort of at the mid-tone stage of the flower. The medium tones are going in right now. Try to maintain the shapes that you'd put in with the rusty browns of the petals to keep them there. It's okay if you want to, go outside the lines on that. That's fine as well. Some of my petals will show the rusty brown through them as well. Like I don't cover it completely with the yellow. I like to leave some of the dark showing through because remember, this is a loose painting, so it's not about having everything perfectly defined and filled in like some paintings we work on. This is really about looseness and the feeling that you just sort of, applied the paint quickly and generously. Okay, next we're going to be doing the smaller flower and maintain those curves in the petals to make it look like it's a side-on flower is very important. It's easy enough to remove any paint that may go over the blue center just by taking a Q-tip or your finger and taking it off. Because I'm shooting this video, normally I would just grab a Q-tip and do it, but in this video I was trying to get it quickly done for you, so I just wiped it with my finger, and that's completely okay. But see how fast it's starting to come together now that you see the green background and you've got the yellow in there. You can see that it's really coming together fast, and it's a kind of a painting. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to sort of bring in a mid-tone greenish yellow. So I'm just on that other side of the paint where I divided and conquered. I just added a little bit more yellow and a little bit of red to kind of make it more mossy color. So you want it to be slightly lighter than what's behind. If you have, stay away from white at this point. If you had too bright a color green, it would stand out too much in contrast to the background. So just move it up a couple of tonal values. Imagine you're looking at a paint chit, and those little paint sample things you get at the hardware store. Imagine you're looking at in green, and you were at the really darkest forest green, and you just go a couple of spaces up and do the green. Now we're going to work on the mid-tone, because that's where we're at now. We're working on mid-tones. We're going to go the center of the flower, so it's going to be a lighter blue. But once again, the tonal values need to be gradual. So you start with the blue on your palette, primary blue, and you're going to add a little bit of red. Okay, the red will warm up your blue to make it towards the purple, right? And instead of adding black this time, we're going to add a little bit of white to get it there. Now, I always look at it and say, is it too blue and too bright? Should I put a little bit more red in it to warm it up? And that's what I did in this case too. Right, so when you feel that it's sort of a mid-tone blue, purpley blue, then you're going to put it on just in dabs and do it kind of in a bit of a circle. You're not going to cover the whole thing, just a little bit, almost like the sun is just, yeah, see that kind of like half curve? Well, congratulations. You've now finished the first part of the Black Eyed Susan video, and you've already learned about depth in this one and about starting with the darkest colors first, or the darkest tonal values. So important in painting, and this builds up the foundation that I've been talking about. So the next step when we go into part 2 of the Black Eyed Susan video, you're going to be putting the highlights in. So clean up your water and your brushes, and you might even have to get your palette cleaned up because we're going to go really into the bright colors. So that's what our next step is, and I'll see you on the next video.